Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. I'm Enrique with my co host Vince to bring you the best in our veteran military spouse and first responder community. And Vince will introduce today's guest.
Hey, thanks, Enrique. We're closing out strong this month of May with Dan Dominguez. Guess what? He's the founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership from Albuquerque and Santa Fe metropolitan area. Dan, welcome to the show. Let's start off. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you for first of all, thank you, Vince. Thank you, Enrique, for having me on. There's a lot to tell about me, but what's important to your audience because this is the Leadership Void podcast, and we're talking to a couple of fellow veterans, and thank you for your service. You know, uh, I'm a entrepreneur. I spent 17 years in corporate leadership, and I spent a lot of time in the military. And so there's, what one of the things we find at my age is there's so much we've learned that we want to share with others. And in the work that my last role after I left corporate leadership, corporate sales leadership, I went to work for the Y Institute, which is a fantastic company founded by a good friend of mine named Gary Sanchez. He developed an assessment that helps people discover their why. And for 4 years, I helped Gary grow that venture. We 10x the number of coaches we had certified around the world to do that work. But doing that work, what I found is that I have a real passion for helping others. When we certify a coach on how to help others discover their why, I wanted to go further. And as you know, when you're a chief growth officer, your job is to bring in new business, and the support it falls to someone else. But I couldn't help myself. I wanted to continue to support. So in September of last year, I made the decision to found Why Not Leadership, and work specifically with coaches who are working with this tool and other tools. And so we founded Why Not Leadership with the premise of helping leaders lead differently through the power of self-awareness. So we use a lot of self-awareness tools. We find, I have found, and I'm sure you guys have found, when you dig deep into who you are, you can really find out who you can be as a leader. You learn how to communicate better. You learn how to understand others better, and you learn how to help others understand you. There are so many lonely leaders at the top, right? When I'll tell you, one of the breakthroughs that came to me is when we run these leadership workshops where we help everybody understand themselves and each other. I would often get the feedback from the team, man, it's so nice to know what how Enrique thinks because now we know how to talk to him as our leader. We didn't know how to do that before. And so that became a cornerstone of the training that we do. So I can tell you more about that as we get into Why Not Leadership's mission. But, I'm an Army veteran. I'm a former Army Airborne Ranger. I spent time serving with the 3rd Armored Cavalry out of Fort Bliss, Texas. And I learned so many great lessons in the military. That's another thing we do as we get older. We start looking back and saying, boy, what did you learn from that? And what's great, and for young leaders out there, we have to understand that even when things go wrong, we're learning, right? So everything that happens to us prepares us for the next thing. So that's here in the fourth quarter or the third of my career, I want to give back as much as possible to as many young leaders and even seasoned leaders who want to be better.
Yeah, and that's a common theme. Thank you for sharing that. The give back, right? The give back is so important to us as we know that we've received so much. And as leaders, it's important to get into that role of giving back. So, as we're talking about your venture, tell us more about Why Not Leadership.
So, one of the things that we talk about, everything we do at Why Not Leadership, it starts with understanding your why. So we all know about Simon Sinek's famous TED Talk in 2008, where he said, start with why. And that led to the whole world reading his book and saying, man, I need to know my why. Well, my good friend Gary Sanchez, who founded the Y Institute, actually created a 10-minute assessment that anybody can take to discover their why, their how, and what, that golden circle. And so what I know is that when people know their why, they know why they do what they do. They know their how they bring their why, their why to life. And when they know their what it is that people can count on from them, it gives them such a clarity in terms of what they want to do with their career. A lot of times I work with veterans that are in career transition. And, when we're in the military, we have a why, right? We raise our hand and we're here to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. You know what you got to do. You got a team around you that that's counting on you and that you're counting on. but that goes away overnight. You go into civilian clothes, and the next day you're in an interview with Joe Schmo next to you and have no idea what you've ever done and what value you bring because you're just a guy. There's no stripes, there's no gold, silver bars, no clover leaves on your lapel to tell anybody what you've done. Now you're Joe, and you've got to be able to communicate that. So we help people discover that. So when I discovered my why, this is what made the biggest impact for me. Gary Sanchez and I, he'd been my dentist for 22 years, so we'd known each other really well. And he founded this company, and he says, I had left my corporate career, and often I call it the toothache that changed my life. I had a toothache on a Saturday. We're playing golf, and I see Gary in the clubhouse afterward. And I said, Gary, I've got a toothache. You think you get me in on Monday? And of course, like a good friend does, he said, look, call the office. We'll get you in, Dan. And I go in to see him, and he says, Dan, so what's this I hear? You retired. I said, well, no, I haven't retired, but I did leave my corporate job. I'm going to do something different. And he says, so what are you going to do? And he says, I said, I don't know, Gary, but whatever I do next, I'm going to love it. And he says, well, Dan, do you know your why? So that's how it began. He said, I need you to take a few minutes, discover your why. And he took me through the process. So I found that my why is to contribute to the success of others, to make a difference, to make a positive impact. So I wake up every morning and I'm thinking to myself, how can I help people today? How can I make a positive impact? My how is to challenge the status quo. So what that means is that how I contribute to the success of others is by doing things different, out of the box, bringing different perspectives to the world. And so that's my how. And my what is to help people make sense of things. My what is make sense. So I'm good at taking in lots of information and helping people make sense of it. So, in a nutshell, I like to, I'm here to contribute to your success. How I'm going to do that is by challenging you to look at things different, think outside the box. And then what I'm going to do is take all those challenging things, because I will throw some weird out of the box ideas at you. Don't worry, I'll help you make sense of them. So that's who I am. And because my how is so strong of challenging the status quo, that's why we call our company Why Not Leadership. I like to work with leaders who are willing to say why not to trying something different, trying something new, digging deep, as we talked about in the pre-show. I think self-awareness is so important for leaders, understanding your drivers, what drives you, how do you like to work, understanding that, and then what it is that people can count on from you. And when you know those three things, then you know who your ideal client is, you know who you like to work with, and you know who you don't like to work with. The other thing it does is, as you're building your team, making sure you're hiring for the gaps, right? Because you didn't see anything in my why, my how, or what about organization. I don't like organization. I don't like details. So you have to hire for somebody who's going to keep track of the details for you. And I'm blessed to have a team that helps me do that so that I don't forget the important stuff.
Amen, brother. I love everything you said. I think Socrates said, know thyself. It's so important to
Right.
know that why. And I love that first chapter of one of your books, the toothache that changed my life. Right? That's
Right.
definitely a chapter, my man. So you talk about giving back, and what do you do, Dan, to give back in the community itself?
I love this question. I have always loved helping causes, right? And so I currently my big thing right now is helping my daughter. My daughter attends a private Catholic school that is out in the middle of nowhere in the mountains of New Mexico, and they struggle for funding. A lot of people think private schools are rich, but not all private schools are, because they're private schools, they don't have government funding. And so everything they do, from paying the teachers, from buying the books, everything has to come out of the money that they charge for tuition, and they want to remain affordable. So that's one place that I'm investing a lot of time and effort right now, helping them create a sustainable foundation for their growth in the future. But when you ask that question, Vince, the reason I think it's such a great question is the school is going through an accreditation process, and the principal called me and said, "Hey, Dan, what we need, what would be really helpful is to know what your background is in fundraising. Tell us a little bit so that I can share with the accreditation board that we have somebody who's really qualified." Well, that made me go back. And I went back and looked, and I have a 34-year-old daughter who also attended a private Catholic school, and I helped found a golf tournament that raised over $1 million in 10 years. I helped found our Rotary Club which does an annual golf. There's a theme here, guys. Does an annual golf tournament where we would raise close to $100,000 to $150,000 a year, and then we would spend the rest of the year giving that money out to the community. So that appealed to me. I got to be president of that club. I had got to help raise those funds. I helped found a charter school, so I was a founding member of a charter school. So in everything I do, I use my talents. I've been in sales my whole life, and even when I was in the Army, I tell people, look, and you guys will resonate with this. When you're in an ambush, the right thing to do is turn your weapon towards where the fire is coming from and run towards it, right? That is so anti what we would normally want to do if we haven't been through training. The thing is, you're going to hide and then you're going to run the opposite direction. I learned, hey, if you've done that, if you can lead people to run towards the fire, you can lead just about anything. And that's a sales job, right? That is the ultimate sales job, guys. We're going that way, where the fire's coming from. So I've been in sales my whole life. So in everything I do in terms of my community service, I bring that to the table. How can I help you by helping you raise funds? So I use my sales skills in everything that I do in terms of helping others. And that's been a passion of mine. So when I look back at, project after project after project, it's how can we help you raise the money you need to accomplish the mission that you have? And the school my daughter goes to, their mission is to raising saints and forming scholars. And boy, that is a great mission, raising kids that want to be saints. When we look at all the great saints throughout history, they became saints because they did amazing things with as Mother Teresa, with great love, do small things. Or Saint Teresa said, do small things with great love, do everything great, and it could be a small thing. And so I'm really proud of the work that I'm doing there, and that's how I help. And the other part that's been helpful for me is to know when I met with that principal, and she said, can you help? And I said, here's me. I'm here to help. I guarantee you, I'm here to contribute. But how I'm going to do it, Mrs. Martinez, is I'm going to do it by doing things different, out of the box. Are you okay with me bringing some ideas that you haven't thought of before? And if that's okay, then we're going to be a fit. If you're going to try to put me in a box and say, hey, all we want you to do is this, that's not going to be a lot of fun for me, and I'm not going to be a lot of fun for you. So, and we talked about that. I was able to communicate, here's the talents I bring. I said, and don't worry, I'll help you make sense of it. Right? Because I know it's going to be you're going to be like, where is he going with this? Don't worry, I'll put it all together in a nice, neat package so it makes sense to you and to the mission that you have.
We'll talk about knowing thyself. It's hard to go into something like that and trying to figure it out. But if you know who you are and how you can contribute, along with the message or the mission of the people that you're helping, it'll be a win-win any day, right? So thank you for doing that in your community. Now, you spoke about why not leadership. Let's talk about the future. What's on the horizon for why not leadership?
Well, Enrique, great question. Despite all our experience and everything we've done, so I spent 11 years in the military. I spent 17 years in corporate sales leadership. I was a national sales director. I've done a lot of things, but coaching is something different, right? And with the how of challenge, as I mentioned in our pre-show, I'm not much for order. I'm not much for processes and systems. I love to wing it. You can't wing it when somebody is needing structure. So I look to, in my 4 years that I spent at Y Institute, I got to deal with a lot of great leadership organizations, ICF, Marshall Goldsmith, John Maxwell, Action Coach. There's a lot of great coaching organizations out there, but the one that I found that was a good fit for me was Marshall Goldsmith. So I spent some time in the first quarter of 2024 getting myself certified to become an executive coach with the Marshall Goldsmith organization, and now I have a framework that, of course, I will diverge and go in and out of, but I have a framework that I can present to my individual coaching clients to help them become better leaders. What's great about that program is it's all about involving your stakeholders. It's called stakeholder-centered leadership. So when I work with the leader, with Enrique, for example, or Vince, I don't just work with Vince. I work with 6 people who are either reporting to him, peers to him, or maybe even someone that works above him on his board of directors, so that we can evaluate how we're doing in improving that leadership. So the other thing that I loved about Marshall Goldsmith, it is It is a guaranteed results type of thing. We're going to measure before, we're going to measure during, and we're going to measure after. And if we don't get results, you don't have to pay. And guess what? That makes the coach accountable, right? We're both in it. I'm not just here to collect a check, and whether you succeed or not is up to you. No, we're going to succeed together, because if you don't succeed, I don't succeed. And so I do that. I met Nancy Parsons runs an amazing organization called CDR, and she has created a deep assessment that looks at our character, our drivers, and our risks as leaders. And it was so accurate. Just like when Gary took me through the YOS discovery, Nancy took me through that assessment. We met. We were both given a keynotes in Denver at a leadership conference, and I saw her presentation. I knew I wanted to know more about it, so I approached her. We got to know each other. She was gracious enough to let me go through the assessment, and then coached me through it, because this thing goes so deep. Especially the risks. It talks about, okay, how do you behave when you're under pressure, when things aren't going well? And when I looked at those things, I said, oh man, that's me. I get withdrawn, and I get mean, right? And then I start withholding from people, and people can tell that things aren't going well. And when I started looking at that deep assessment, and I said, oh, I want this for the leaders I work with. So I partnered with her. That was a great certification that I gained. So I use that also with my clients. And then my final one was with Tim Cosby. He runs an organization that their assessment, their what they teach is conversational management, because leadership is about the conversations we have. I don't know about you guys, but whether you're on a football team, or you're leading troops, or you're leading a sales team, it's fun to get up in front of everybody and do the rah rah, let's go get them. We got a goal here. But guess what? The real coaching, the real leadership happens in those one on one conversations that you have with your leaders after the rah. The rah rah is great. That kind of lets everybody know what we're going to do. But I need to go speak to Vince one on one. And so conversational management gives leaders the skills to ask the right questions. Nobody cares everything Vince knows, because it may not apply to their situation. However, if Vince asks the right questions, we get to the answer that leader is looking for. So Tim Cosby's program is the third tool that I added to my tool belt before I started helping leaders lead different through the amazing power of self-awareness. And that's really where we start. We start with, hey, let's get to know you first. Let's understand you and where you're coming from, what's your character, what drives you, and then how are you under stress, so that we can communicate better with the people around us.
Dan, I love hearing everything you say. It seems like you're getting your black belt towards coaching. It's great, great thing, great tools to have to, help others find their why, as you sell self discovery and understand them. So communication was very key to all this, as you mentioned. Now, anything additional to your certifications you do to sharpen your skill sets that aid you to thrive in your professional life?
Well, I do things like this. I love surrounding myself. Enrique and I were co-authors on that book, Voices for Leadership. I have found that there are amazing leaders all around us. There are amazing coaches. My coach, Jerry Lujan, who runs Elevation 180, I had a great day with him yesterday. So he's a golfer. I'm a golfer. I get coached while we're playing golf, and he has done so many amazing things, coached so many amazing people, that I learned just by being around him. And what I have found is I surround myself with excellence, and I reach out to excellence. Connections are important, and so the I think the other thing that I'm doing is I go to the experts. I had a couple of opportunities, and this is on entrepreneurship 101, right? I had a couple of opportunities in front of ideal audiences for my product. Because the other thing that I do is I do team leadership workshops to help people. The framework is know yourself, know your team, and then know your leader. So there's three parts to those workshops that I do for teams. And I had an opportunity in front of ideal clients that had budget, they were the right kind of leaders, and I didn't get a single sale out of it. And I said to myself, what's going on? What am I not doing? And we can and we know this, right? We can keep, oh, let me try it a different way, let me try it a different way. Well, what I also know is that there are people out there that have gone through this before. So I found Krista Martin is a good friend of mine. We've been friends. She's on my podcast a couple of years ago. What she does is she created a framework for, and she calls it power let me see, talks that convert, creating talks that convert, right? So what, so, and I'll just get, how about I give your listeners a freebie here. You ever get into a presentation and you're so excited about the topic you're presenting that you educate the heck out of that audience? Man, they learn so much from you. And then when the presentation's over, it's crickets, right? Nobody's calling you for the next step because you forgot to activate them. And so you have to, as you present, as you educate, you also have to activate. So you have to make sure that in your presentation, people understand, hey, this is what you get when you work with Vince, so that they pick up the phone and say, hey, Vince, I saw your talk. I'm very interested in learning more about what you talked about. How can we work together? And so rather than beat my head against the wall after failing two separate opportunities, I called Krista and I signed up for her course because I knew I needed to sharpen that. So I think what it comes down to is look at the people that are doing what you want to do better, and then reach out to them. And yes, sometimes it takes an investment, but I will tell you that investment paid for itself within 1 week. I literally, it's an 8 week course that I'm taking with Krista. Within 1 week, I had picked up a hint on something that I was missing. I implemented into my next presentation, and that led to a conversion. And so when you do that, a conversion for us can be anywhere between $5,000 $10,000. So you spend $1,000 on a course, and the next week you close a deal that it 10x is that, like the book says behind me, 10x is easier than 2x. I'll take that every time, every single day. But you have to believe, right? You have to, Krista is amazing at maintaining relationships. And for those you guys are good about, reaching out. We all have clients that don't buy when we first meet with them, right? And you can just give up on them, but or you can do what Krista and very successful entrepreneurs and coaches do is you stay in touch and you send out value, whether it's a newsletter or just an email, maybe a couple times a year. We're saying, hey, Vince, how you doing? We haven't talked in a while. I saw that you posted a great interview with Enrique the other day. Keep up the good work. And then I'll let you know what I do. And that's what Krista does. Hey, this is what I do. This is what I help people with. And when I got hit in the head with that failure or that learning opportunity, I said, I know who does this really well. And I called her, and she had to do zero sales. It was, how do I sign up for your next workshop? Because I need it right now, because I don't want to get in front of another ideal audience again and not be prepared.
Well, that's a great way of not only investing in yourself for your future learning, but converting that into your sales process to continue your entrepreneur journey as well. So good of you to not only take notice of that, but actually acquire that and implement it. Now, talking about acquiring and implementing, we all get advice from now and then. And most advice we kind of sift through it. But what advice did you receive that you would like to share with an emerging leader today?
Oh, that's a great question. And I actually am going to be talking about it on my next podcast. Oh man, I'm trying to remember the name, but it'll come to me. When I first became a leader in sales, my good friend Mike Durgan, he's retired now from Baxter Healthcare. He did the full 25 30 years, and he was just one of those leaders that he just led teams successfully all the time. And so he'd been a regional manager, which was my first promotion I got for a while. And I got promoted, and Mike says, "Hey Dan, I'm at my first meeting with all the leaders, right? All the regional managers across the U.S." And he says, "Leadership, Dan, is a people business. Don't ever forget that. There's KPIs. Yes, you got to have the numbers. You got to hit goals, and you got to set standards for what you're doing. But at the end of the day, leadership is a people business, and understanding, because we had, in my division, we had $500 million budgets every year. Those numbers are important to a big corporation. You miss out by $500 million, you're going to go to Wall Street and say, sorry, we didn't hit that number, right? So we have to be on our toes. We have to hit those numbers. We have to make sure we're doing our meetings. We're doing the things that we're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, leadership is a people business. If you're not treating your people well, then you're going to have turnover, right? If you have turnover, that's costing you a lot of money. When you're in an environment where you're paying salespeople, these were professional, seasoned salespeople. We hired them right around 6 figures. So you're talking spending 6 figures on somebody for 3 months, getting them trained up, and then having them meet a manager that they don't vibe with, and leaving 2 months later. Well, you just lost almost $50,000, or all the money you spent on training, and then all the money you're going to spend recruiting again, because we didn't have a good people process. So, that's probably, I just truly believe people are people. We have to treat them with respect. We have to make sure that they feel valued. They have to have clarity on their role so that they can perform. And then we have to make sure, I learned my platoon sergeant when I was a young second lieutenant in the 3rd Armored Cav. I read a book called The 1 Minute Manager. I don't know if you guys have read it, but one of the things that he talks about is catch people doing something right. And me and Sergeant Brindley, he'd been in 22 years. Here comes a shiny new lieutenant, and he's gonna show me how things are done. And he took great care of me. I mean, was a fantastic leader and helped me learn the ropes. But when I said, "Hey, Sergeant Brindley, I just read this book. Here's something we're gonna do. We're gonna walk around the motor pool and catch the guys doing something right." And man, that makes a difference, because when we look at statistics today, we find that 73% of our workforce, so 3 out of 4 employees, are thinking about getting another job. And why are they thinking of getting another job? Because they're not happy at their current job. Well, how productive is somebody when they're doing what you asked them to do, but on their mind is that next job? Probably not as productive. And then when we look at other statistics, they say that employees who are engaged, who feel like their leader cares about them, are 21% more productive. So all you have to do is get to know the people, understand what drives them, give them work that's meaningful to them based on what's important to them, and they're going to be 21% more productive. What leader doesn't want 21% more productivity, and it doesn't cost you a dime? You just got to go around and make sure you know your people. What do we call it in the Army? We call it leadership by walking around. Sometimes all you got to do is show up and talk to your troops, and they understand that, hey, boss is here and he cares about us. He's asking questions about me. He asked me about my daughter. I didn't even know he remembered that my daughter was born 6 months ago, and he asked how's the baby doing. Those are the things that people remember, and those are the things that allow people to stay that extra hour when they need to, because they feel like you care about them as a person. So leadership is a people business. Mike Durgan, 2004, I believe, is when I heard that.
Yeah, definitely leadership is a people business. Talk a lot about EQ, emotional intelligence, caring about your troops, listening to them, walk around, catch them when they're doing things right. Awesome stuff there, Dan. Now, you're 11 years in the military or 17 in corporate. What memorable leadership aha moment you'd like to share with our audience today?
Boy, man, there's a lot. You know, I remember, and we're capable of so much more than we think. When I was in the 3rd Armored Cab, I was a logistics officer, and we had this was so much fun. Sergeant Brindley and we had a piece of equipment called a ROM, a refuel on the move unit. So the 3rd Armored Cab, we as a logistics officer, I was in charge of the POL platoon, petroleum. Our job was to fuel those M1 tankers at the forward edge of the battle area so they could go in. And M1s get 1 mile to the gallon, so they better have a full tank, So we had to fill those things up. And the way we did it, we had 5,000-gallon fuel tankers, and we'd set up kind of like a mobile gas station. And then that's a lot of fun, right? You're at the forward edge of the battle area with something that's very flammable, and the M1s are behind you. They're not in front of you yet. You got to fuel them so they go into the battle fully fueled. But I remember we had this system where the way we did it was every 5,000-gallon tanker had a hose and you could connect. But we had a system where each tanker could then set up a gas station with 8 stations. So then you could fuel, one tanker could fuel 8 M1s, and another tanker could fuel another 8. But we'd never done it before. And I said, why haven't we done it? Well, we don't have all the pieces. And I said, well, why don't we order all the pieces? And so we set out. It took us about 3 months to get everything set up. And then we made it fun. We tried it for the first time. It took us 3.5 hours to hook that sucker up, to set it up. And when you're at the forward edge of you don't have 3.5 hours to set up a fuel station. So we just did, we made it fun. Sergeant Brindley said, let's have a competition. Let's have the different squads, see who can do it faster. And I'm not kidding you. In about 6 months, we were setting up those fueling stations in 7 minutes. And I mean, we had one crew in a truck. They're throwing out the equipment. Other one's on the ground. They're connecting everything. And we did it with water because we didn't want to spill fuel. But we filled we had the water tankers and we ran fuel through them. And it was like, man, to go from hours to minutes, and just by setting a goal and making it fun. So for me, it's always been, as part of my challenge, part of my personality. It's always about making it fun. I work best in environments. When I was in sales, in the Army, my commander said, "Hey, look, figure out how to do it. I don't care how you do it, right? Great leaders say, I don't care how you do it, get it done. Here's the mission," right? And so we got that down to 7 minutes. We were able to deploy and fuel 16 tankers, where before we were having to fuel 2 at a time. We would do 16 M1s at a time, send them out to the battle fully fueled and ready to rock and roll. And I learned to do that in sales. My leader at Baxter, who I was blessed with, Dave Lambert, he was great, because at the beginning of the year he would say, "Hey Dan, here's your quota. Here's my number. Don't break the law. See you at the next meeting." So my bumpers were pretty wide. As long as I didn't break the law, there was a lot of fun we could have to reach those targets. So we did a lot of fun activities. I think as leaders, we can't forget to have fun. You can't let the kid inside you die, because guess what? When we're kids, we love winning those races, right? When our kids don't want to do something, you say, "I'll time you." And they're like, "Okay." Right? And that's basically what we did with that refuel on the move. Hey, guys, and I don't want to, man, that thing is, "Hey, how about I time you?" And you guys race against the other 4 squads and see who's better. And man, it just became fun. And it just, every week when we go out to train, it was like, okay, who's going to do it better? And then we were happy when we broke 3 hours. We were happy we got it under 1 hour. We were happy when under half an hour. Now we're shaving seconds. Now we're in that elite level, right? How do we get to minutes, And so that's a lot of fun. Don't forget to have fun. And if you keep it fun, you keep your troops engaged, you keep your teams engaged, and remember that they're people first.
Yeah, that's an envisioning in my mind. That's just a fun thing to go through, right? And you talk about engaging the competition in a person, and especially in the service, we're very competitive and
Right.
want to be first. So, great way to incorporate that childhood and the mission, marry those together to receive such a great results. Now, we're in the people business, right? You say leadership is a people business, and people business eventually will bring us to times of change and challenges. It's just part of our life. So, what strategies do you use with your company and your teams when those times of change and challenge come?
Well, I think, and I hate to do this, but it really comes back to understanding why you do what you do. Challenges are going to come. You're going to be challenged in life, and understanding. So why not leadership? We believe that success happens when we make a positive impact in the lives of others. So we're here to make a positive impact. We do that by challenging the status quo and challenging leaders to look deep, understand themselves, and then we help them make sense of things. Well, that's good for me to know, but guess what? It's good for everybody on my team to know. It's good for them to understand that our mission is bigger than us, right? Just like in the military, our mission is bigger than us. And so when your team understands, because I'll have leaders that say, "Look, I don't care what my people think about me. I hired them, I'm paying them, and they just got to do their job." Well, that's great. And if that's the way you want to run your business, guess what? I'm not your coach. But if you come to me and say, "Hey, I pay my people and they got to do their job, but I wish they understood how important this is to our company. And so then now that's a leader I want to work with, because there's a desire in you to understand your people better. There's a desire to help them understand you. And when you bring the company's mission to everybody, I love the story of the bricklayer, right? He's there's three guys working on a construction project, and a guy's walking by. He says, "Hey, so what do you do?" He says, "Oh, I'm a bricklayer." Oh, great. Talks to the next guy. Says, "What do you do?" "I'm a bricklayer." Talks to the third guy, and he says, "Sir, I'm helping build a cathedral." See, that guy knew his leadership had told him what the mission was. He wasn't just laying bricks; he was building a cathedral. We heard about President Kennedy walking through NASA, right? And he asked the janitor, "So what do you do here?" And he says, "Sir, I'm helping put a man on the moon." That's a guy that was in touch with his mission. That's a leader. Somebody above him took the time to say, "Hey, you're not just here sweeping floors. You're sweeping floors so that they're clean, so that our astronauts have a surface that they can walk on, that they can feel proud of when they go through, and you're helping them feel better. So that when they get in that rocket, they have confidence because they just walk through a clean, sparkling hallway that somebody took the time to clean up for them, and you're part of that mission. You're helping put a man on the moon. So I think it's important when everybody's tied around the mission, when the person that's the lowest on the totem pole and the person that's highest on the totem pole have the same mission, vision, and values, we're going to get a lot of great things done.
Absolutely. People first, right? It's always good to understand and to reiterate every time you go out there to any walks of any people in any echelon of the organization. And I also wanted to share early on, failures and mistakes are the raw materials of success. So we have to go through those to become successful. And you're one of those success stories there, Dan. So how do we contact you, or why not leadership?
So best way to get a hold of me is very simple. Dan at whynotleadership.com. You spell out the WHYNOT leadership.com. That's my email. My website is simple, whynotleadership.com. So check us out on our website. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn. I know we've connected through LinkedIn. Follow my podcast, the Lead Different podcast. By the way, I'm going to have Vince Enrique on. I've already extended an invitation. We're going to talk about leading different, talk about the leadership void, and get you guys some exposure to our why not leaders around the world.
Outstanding. Well, folks, we're going to have that as part of the show notes and video for you to get a hold of Dan and Why Not Leadership. And if you'd like to get a hold of us at the Leadership Void podcast, the leadershipvoid@gmail.com is where you'll send that correspondence. If you want to see a featured speaker or a leadership topic covered, you'll do it by those means.
And we're also grateful for our sponsors, Triple Nickel, a hero for kids, and FAVOB. But today is all about Dan and why not leadership. So, Dan, thank you for being on the show, and much success in your future.
Thank you so much for having me, Vince. Thank you for having me, Enrique. You guys, this was a whole lot of fun. I'm so glad to be on with you. I look forward to seeing the episode air.